Do you believe confidently 100% that Koberger acted alone?
You are expecting. Yes, absolutely. There is no reason to believe otherwise.
We don't have any evidence to indicate that there was another person involved, and the investigators looked. Uh, that said, I guess there's always a possibility that there's something out there that is unknown to the investigators and to us.
And do you believe that it was just the one knife?
You are expecting. Yes, as we've said the entire time it was a bar, and a bar alone.
I also think it is possible that he had another weapon of some type. I don't know if it was a blunt force weapon or something. I think that
What?
it is likely that he had more than one weapon with him.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, I planned a different video today. I planned to do the comment video, like I said in the video yesterday, but I'm going to have to put that one off till tomorrow, and then I'll follow up with the second part of part 3 the next day, because I think it's just very important for me to do this one first. Whenever I started that one off with the statements that I made on the roommates, I knew that a lot of people's heads would explode, and I anticipated that, and that's why I said it. However, I was hoping that maybe before their heads exploded or after their heads exploded, that they would be able to do like I asked and just forget everything they knew about the case and look at everything strictly from an objective standpoint and see what the evidence told them. But I knew, I should have known that, you know, once I made that statement, that all the focus would go in on the roommates. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to break down, because obviously my words weren't taken the way that I meant them to be taken. There's no doubt that the roommates lied about a lot. And there's no doubt that the 8-hour delay to call 911 needs to be explained. There's a lot of things that go around that. But the point I was making was, I think once you look at all of the evidence around the actual crime now, they're real statements to law enforcement, and you implore some techniques in reading those statements and looking at the overall picture, then you start to get a much more clear picture of why those roommates would lie, where they were lying, and where they were using other examples of lying to minimize why they did what they did. And I know that's a lot of word salad right there. I'm going to try to make it all come to life for you in this video. So I'm going to go through and we're going to really break down the roommates' statements in this video, and I'll show you why I've come to the conclusions that I've come to on that. And hopefully that will at least help you see my perspective on things, and will enable you to watch the video that I did yesterday without the roommates getting in the way, and be able to see what I was showing you and then start to really contemplate it. Before I do that, just to mention a couple things. I know I responded to a comment by one of my folks, Fred. Just so you know, Fred, when I respond to comments, man, I'm not, you know, a great typer that sits there and type out long things, but when I respond, I'm just trying to respond to what I'm looking at there, and I was trying to help. No way was I wanting you to take it as I didn't appreciate your comments and your thoughts. I really appreciate all of your comments and all of your thoughts. And as I read through those, I seen some that leave very long comments that say, "Wait, I don't think anybody ever even reads these because of what I've said in the past." And I know I write long comments because I have a lot of thoughts. I do read them, and I do appreciate you. Also, shout out to Birdie. I was watching him last night, and I appreciate the kind words that you said. Keep doing what you're doing, guy. Watch it now, putting on the Pav hat and glasses, though, man, because that makes magic happen. And if you look cooler than Pav does, then that ain't cool. No, I'm just kidding, man. I appreciate you, dude. As we get into this one, though, I'm going to be showing you some things that's important for you to pay very close attention, because we're going to go through and we're going to really pick some fly shit out of black pepper. We're going to do a little studying. This is going to be educational as well as informational. And I can tell you that I've in my experience, one of the things that I have been able to do most of my life in business and in personal situations was, like you see me put in my interviews that I do, my simulated interviews, I always call myself a professional BS detector, because I'm about as close as you're ever going to find to a professional BS detector. And that is through personal and professional experience, I assure you. But we're going to go through and I'm going to point out a few things. We're going to do a little studying, and we're going to look at some things, and I hope this helps. I'm not expecting everybody to agree with me on every point, but I do want everybody to be able to understand at least why my point of view is what it is. With all that being said, let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to point out just before we get into this, though, is this one comment I get 1,000 times over, and it's, well, I don't believe the cartel would leave witnesses. Well, number one, we're not really talking about the cartel. We're talking about trafficking thugs, right? Trafficking thugs. And when I hear the concept of, I don't think, we'll just call them the cartel, I don't think the cartel would leave witnesses. Well, then I have to ask you this. If it was rogue police officers that committed the atrocity, they wouldn't want to leave witnesses either, would they? I mean, they would know what a witness would do to them. If it was the roving frat boys, I mean, if they're going to unalive 4 people, I doubt they're going to want to leave a witness either if they're trying to get away with it like they did. And even if it's like the narrative is, a serial unaliver, I mean, why would they go in and unalive 4 people and then leave a witness? There is no reasonable example that you can give me for any of these people to leave a witness. But I can tell you this, if it's rogue cops doing it, it was for personal reasons. If it was frat boys doing it, it was for personal reasons. And if it was a serial unaliver, it'd be a personal reason to themselves. And that would leave absolutely no reason to leave a witness. But if it was criminal thugs that were handling business, and when I say handling business, when they take care of people that snitch or family members of people that snitched, that to them, that's business. They're going to be less likely to unalive any more people than they have to when they're handling business, because they look at it like it's business. And they would be far more likely, in my opinion, to threaten a witness to not do something and believe that they're going to follow it way more than any of these other entities. So if you're going to say, well, I don't think the cartel would leave witnesses, well, then at least follow it with a very good reason why any of these other people would leave witnesses. And friends is not a good reason, let me tell you, when you're talking about a quadruple unaliving. I just wanted to start with that. Now, we're going to talk about types of lies and how they apply to the subject at hand. And you can see here's a lot of examples of types of lies. I'm going to focus in on a few different ones, though, not all of them, because I think only a few of them really apply in this situation. And that is fabrication, lies of omission, and minimization. And I think the minimization is the one that really comes into play the most. But let's talk about, for example, cover-up lies, right? This would be an example of fabrication. And these are lies that are deliberate attempts to hide or disguise the truth about a particular situation or event to protect oneself. This includes lying by omission, providing a false alibi. For example, a person may lie to the police about their whereabouts when a crime was committed, or lie about their knowledge of the crime to protect themselves or something else or someone else. Then you have lies of omission. See, lies of omission are where vital information is withheld or deliberately left out. And lies of omission can be similar to other types of lies, such as cover-up or evasive lies, in that they involve withholding information. However, lies of omission are distinct from other lies because they don't require making up false information. Instead, people who tell lies of omission hide vital information that could change how someone sees a situation. And this is the most common lie and the most effective lie, because a lie of omission doesn't require you to lie about anything else. You're just leaving out key things that would change the perception of the situation. And then this is my favorite. It's called selective memory. But on the other hand, selective memory involves intentionally recalling only certain aspects of a situation while ignoring others to downplay one's involvement in a challenging event or to emphasize one's role in a positive one. So selective memory is only remembering the things that are selectively beneficial to yourself. But then there's minimization. And minimization is the one that I really look close at as it comes to shifting from first statements to second statements to third statements. Minimization is the opposite of exaggeration. It involves downplaying the significance or impact of a fact, making it seem less important or harmful than it actually is. This tactic is often used to avoid responsibility, diffuse conflict, or lessen the perceived severity of an issue by quickly glossing over key details or understating the consequences. The person minimizes the importance of the situation, therefore the importance of any wrongful acts that they may have done before, during, or after. So keep those specific ones in mind. Now, I've got to put special emphasis on this subject because it's my firm belief that this subject right here may have greatly impacted actions taken by the roommates after the atrocity and may possibly be responsible for those actions and the lies that therefore flowed from those actions. But when we take a Occam's razor approach to the second weapon in this case, we have to look at some facts. And I'm pretty stout on the second weapon being an SKS. And for those of you that have followed me closely for a long time, you'll know why I really focus in on the SKS. But when we look at the facts around it, I'm going to go through this one more time. Number one, it was said that, and I hate to even go through this, but it was said that Kaylee's face was literally smashed in to a point where it wasn't recognizable. Her teeth were broken. To do that, you're not punching somebody with a fist. You're not hitting them with something that's not a very heavy object. I mean, you're literally having to get a heavy object and really smash someone for that to happen. Okay? Now, I got to give you a warning right now. This is a warning. I'm about to show you a very graphic scene of employing the use of a weapon like this onto somebody's face. So if you can't handle a very graphic scene, I need you to close your eyes and ears for the next 6 or 7 seconds. All right, warning's in place. Now it's about to happen. Okay, I think I've made my point on number one. But then number two, it's also going to have enough force to leave stripes on each side of the victim's mouth. Okay, and when you look at the butt plate of an SKS, as I showed you, it's almost always going to have these striped ribs. And when you look at each side of a victim's mouth, it's going to have to be an object that's wide enough to go each side of a victim's mouth and have enough force and impact to actually leave the stripe pattern. So that's going to eliminate a lot of things. Certainly doesn't eliminate this. In fact, it points directly to it in my humble opinion. But then number 3, we have the obvious fact of Dylan saying in her statement that she thought now maybe it was a gun. So she literally said she's seen a guy with a gun, and it was an unknown object, and it had an arrow shaped. A gun with an arrow shape. Now, to me, her seeing a gun with a barrel with a sight on the end, I mean, I think that's enough to call it an arrow shape. But some people have speculated that SKS may have had a bayonet, and a lot of times the bayonet on an SKS could be a K-bar knife. Now, I don't know if that's, the case, if that's really necessary for it to look like an arrow, but I mean, it's definitely plausible. But I think even without that, the appearance of the SKS appears to be an arrow. And the fact she says it was a gun, I mean, you can bet it was a gun. So a witness stating she's seeing a guy with a gun, I think greatly reduces the list of items that could have caused these injuries and explain everything else around this situation. Then there's number 4, and Bethany really literally describes hearing and seeing a gunshot. I mean, she wakes up to a firecracker, right, and sees a flash. That's in statement 1. Statement 3, she wakes up to a firecracker and sees a sparkler going off. Statement 2 is she woke up to a firecracker and seen a spark. So all 3 statements point to a gun. And then there's number 5, and I think the most compelling, and that is we see an assailant in the Queen Road apartments at 10 minutes before the crime starts, and everything else I showed you in part 2 of this series I'm doing. And he racks his gun and heads towards the King Road residence, signals a getaway driver and everything else. And that tells us that there's likely an assailant with a gun. And then there is this. So in my humble opinion, I mean, we can all play the game of let's think of 1,000 objects that could have done this, and 1,000 more 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 that could have done this, and then let's wipe our butts with hula hoops and see how that works out for us. Or we can take all of the evidence in totality and see what is the most logical thing that's used. And I'll give you some examples here of how that works. All right, for example, I've heard people speculate that it could be a stun gun, right? A stun gun. The stun gun could have been the thing that Bethany describes, hearing the firecracker and then seeing the flash, right? That stun gun could account for that. But you see, the stun gun wouldn't account for that assailant I just showed you racking his SKS, and it's not going to account for Dylan seeing a guy holding the SKS. It's certainly not going to account for the stripes left on each side of Kaylee's mouth, and it's not going to account for the blunt force object that did the smashing. So while it's a good theory that explains this, since it doesn't explain anything else, I don't think that's a logical candidate for that. And unless we're going to be like Bill Thompson and say we got a person walking in there that has, 5, 6 arms and he's holding something different in each arm. Now, next, we've got the flashbang. All right, a lot of people, we got the flashbang. That could account for what Bethany literally describes hearing and seeing. Well, sure could. but it won't just, account for, her seeing a guy holding a SKS. It won't account for the stripes on Maddie's mouth, the blunt force object that smashed in the face, and it certainly wouldn't account for the gun rack guy racking his gun and then clicking his release. So, yeah, we can account for that. And then we have to have 5 arms holding different things. Then we got this thing. I've heard this. A stick that holds a ball that the frat boys have put together. And absolutely, that thing could have, caused the blunt force to Kaylee and maybe even possibly left the stripes because it was rounded. It's not going to account for Dylan seeing a gun. It certainly isn't going to, pop like a firecracker and create light. And it has nothing to do with that assailant that is racking his gun right before the atrocity. So again, do we have a guy with 5 or 6 arms holding different things? And then there's this one, which this is I applaud the people for, trying to come up with answers on it. And, the handcuffs that would certainly create the stripes on each side of Kaylee's mouth. I have to say though, on the handcuffs, if you were to take the handcuffs and you set one on top of the other, and then you grab the bottom with your fist and you use the handcuffs like it's like a brass knuckle type object. Well, here's what happens. And I know, unfortunately, because when I was young, I did this. When you grab your fist around the bottom here and you try to use these like some brass knuckles, well, as soon as you hit something with force and it applies force to this side of it right here, well, there's nothing that's holding your hand on this side other than your knuckles. So when you hit with enough force, your hand actually releases from this side unintentionally, and it flies up and it hits this side, and it hurts really, really bad. And it's very unstable also when you hit something. It usually either pops left or pops right, up or down. It doesn't stay. It's certainly not brass knuckles. And if you were to hit somebody with that one time, I promise you wouldn't hit them again. And they certainly would not create enough force to smash somebody's face in. And then again, it also doesn't account for 3, 4, or 5. So again, a 5-armed assailant. But if you take the totality of the evidence, and is there anything that explains it all? And I think there most certainly is. And I go through that, not being condescending, but I go through that because until you really get the mindset of what they were dealing with and what they had seen, then going through and looking at their statements is not going to have the same impact. Once you know what they were looking at and what they had seen and possibly what was said to them, then you can go through their statements and actually make sense of them. In my humble opinion, this is my opinions. This is my channel. It's my opinions, right? So with that in mind, going through everything in their statements, I want you to keep in mind the cover-up lies, what we talked about, the lies of omission, selective memory, and minimization being the most prevalent. And then we can really start to get closer to the truth when we apply these concepts. And we know, there's no doubt, so everybody jumping, I know they're lying, Pav. Yeah, well, of course they're lying. We know that they lied about being asleep when the atrocity starts. I mean, we know for a fact that Dylan wasn't asleep. She had created a contact in her phone 10 minutes prior. So that's going to be an example of a cover-up lie. Cover-up lies are deliberate attempts to hide or disguise the truth about a particular situation or event to protect oneself, right? We've got to understand they did things that they know weren't right, like not calling 911. When they're giving statements, they're trying to minimize what they did wrong. Dylan and Bethany don't call 911, right? This is a lie of omission where vital information is withheld or deliberately left out. And that is why they didn't call 911 is what they've left out. Dylan and Bethany lie about being asleep after the atrocity, right? Another example of a cover-up lie. And because of these lies, I believe the minimization really played a key role in their statements. And we're going to go through and look. But the minimization, again, is key from the first statement to the second statement to the third statement. Something that may have been a very serious thing in the first statement because they didn't dial 911 and they know they've lied about things. Well, they would want to minimize things that are serious as time goes on because it's going to make them look worse and worse for not calling 911. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so we start with Nunez's statement, which coincidentally was written on 11/13/2022. One of the only ones I've seen that was, written that same day that the thing happened. And his narrative's on November 13th, 2022 at approximately 11:56 hours. And we're going to go down to where he took Dylan's statement right here. And he says, I walked outside and began interviewing Dylan. Dylan told me at approximately 4 o'clock, she heard a voice scream and believed it to be Kaylee's. Dylan said she heard Kaylee scream and announced there was somebody inside the residence. Dylan said she could hear Kaylee run from the 3rd floor down the stairs to the 2nd floor into the northwest bedroom. So again, she's hearing Kaylee run downstairs into Xana's room, is what she's saying. Dylan said she locked herself in her bedroom and continued to hear a commotion. So what is she describing? Kaylee screaming, saying somebody's in the house. Kaylee, what she thinks is Kaylee running to Xana's bedroom and hearing commotion. And she locked herself in her bedroom. Why? Because this was a scary thing. This was not like they've made it out for them to, to say that it was. This scared the crap out of her. She knew something was going on. She hears commotion. She hears Kaylee screaming. She knows saying somebody in the residence is not, hey, I think there's somebody, there's a DoorDash at the door. Give me a break. Dylan said eventually she stopped hearing a struggle. All right, these are Dylan's words: a struggle, commotion, scream. All right, this is her telling things right after the 911 call. This is the closest we're going to get to the truth right here, folks. And heard a male voice say, "You're going to be fine. I'm going to help you." Dylan said she did not recognize the male's voice. Dylan said after a few minutes, she peeked out of her bedroom and observed a male described as approximately 6 feet tall, slim build, with a black ski mask, leaving the 2nd floor patio area. This patio door was likely left open as it was found open upon my arrival, meaning Nunez's arrival. So when you look at her first statement, what does it say? She peeked out of her bedroom because she was scared of everything she was hearing when she seen this guy. So it's important to take the first statement that's the closest to the truth before a lot of extra minimization starts to take place because of the actions that Dylan took after this situation, in my humble opinion. Just follow me on this. And so there's no confusion about the second interviews. This is a completely separate report by John Lawrence on November 14th, discussing November 13th, 2022. Hey, Johnny Lawrence. What is it? Fear will not exist in this dojo. Defeat will not exist in this dojo. I don't think it's that, Johnny Lawrence. But one of the statements in here is the interview started at about 1,348 hours. Those to be interviewed arrived at the MPD at about 1,330 hours. So that means that 1 hour or 138 was the time that all the interviews with the roommates and Hunter and Emily and Josie took place. All right, so but when we go to not Johnny Lawrence, but Lawrence Mowry, and see his is written on November 28th, but he's discussing what took place on November 13th, 2022. And we're going to skip down here to Dylan and what she said happened during the events. And you can see it's quite a bit more information in this one. But Dylan said she woke up at around 4 o'clock on 11/13/2022. Now, I'm going to point out, I've taken all the key points from both of the statements, and I've got a separate spreadsheet we're going to be going over. So you'll notice things like in her first statement, she never said that she woke up at around 4. She just said that things started happening around 4. So when we get to the second statement, she's adding little extra things that to me she's imploring minimization, because she knows that what they did after the atrocity was something that was not right. But she woke up at around 4 o'clock on November 13th, where she could hear Kaylee and Murphy, the dog, dancing. Now, see, the statement has changed from screaming, running, to hearing Kaylee and Murphy, the dog, dancing. She knew it was Kaylee because she recognized her voice and could hear Murphy barking. Okay, so now the Murphy barking is something new, and I'll point out all this. Dylan said she heard Kaylee go upstairs. See, now she says she heard Kaylee go upstairs and say, "There's someone here." Dylan said she thought she heard Kaylee run back down the stairs. And remember, in her first statement, she said run down the stairs and then run to the northwest bedroom, which is Xana's room. Now, Dylan said Kaylee sounded scared when she made this statement. Kaylee sounded scared when she made this statement of "there's someone here." Dylan said at this time she jumped up and locked the door because she did not know what else to do, right? So this isn't just some innocent thing that she's describing to law enforcement. She jumped up, locked doors. She didn't know what else to do. This is some real stuff happening. Dylan said she called out Kaylee's name and did not indicate if she got a response. So she's now adding this in, that she screamed out Kaylee's name. Could this have happened, or is this just another example of her minimizing her role of what happened after the events by interjecting things that may or may not have happened to make her look a little less guilty? Dylan said she then tried to call Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie on their phones. Dylan was asked if she saw anyone come downstairs or heard anything. Dylan said no. No, I don't even know how they got in. I don't even know how they got in, is what Dylan said. We're usually pretty good about locking doors and never had problems before. We're usually pretty good about locking doors. I would assume that means the back door as well. And nowhere in her statements did she say the back door did not latch. So everybody that believes the back door was broken, I believe if it was broken, she would have mentioned that in this. And by saying we're pretty good at locking doors, I think everybody has been lied to about those back doors not latching. So I know I'll get 30 comments saying, "Oh, the back door latch didn't work." You have no evidence of that. No evidence of that. I think this is probably stronger evidence that it wasn't. I was just really random. I think it was just really random is what he was trying to type. When asked again about the series of events, Dylan said she opened the door when she cried out to Kaylee. So look, he's asked her once. Now he's asking her again. So she's going to probably add even a little bit more than she added to the first one. When asked about the series of events, she said she opened the door when she cried out to Kaylee, then closed the door because she was scared. Dylan said she then opened the door again and heard who she thought was Kaylee, but could have been Xana crying in the bathroom. Now, I need you to really pay attention right here, because I assure you that Dylan thought it was Kaylee up until the time that law enforcement let her know that that was Xana unalived in that second bedroom. So when she's giving this statement, she's telling exactly what she thought was true, that it was Kaylee, but now in her mind, because they've told her that that was Xana unalived in the second bedroom and Kaylee upstairs, now her mind's trying to tell her, well, but maybe that could have been Xana, now that you've told me that, it was Xana that was unalived. But I think that's even more to go to the fact that Dylan really thought that was Kaylee in Xana's bedroom unalived. Dylan said she then heard a man's voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." And you can see it's kind of watered down now from what she said in her first statement. But I don't even know that that's an example of minimization. I think that's just because she's already said it one time. This is just her shortening up what she's already said. Dylan said it was weird because the statement was not in a nice way, and the voice was one she had never heard before. Dylan said she called out to Kaylee again. So she's saying this is like the third time she screamed out to Kaylee, and there was no crying after, and she did not know what happened after that. She probably knew what happened after that, after the crying stopped. And I think it's questionable whether she ever yelled out to Kaylee. I think that is examples of her trying to make her look like that she was doing more than she did. Examples of minimization. Dylan said she opened the door again, and the guy is right there. Now, remember in the first statement, she said she just peeked out the door. But now she opened the door, and the guy is right there. Dylan described the male as approximately her height, 5'10", or a few inches taller, not skinny but athletic built. Dylan said the suspect was wearing all black with masks that covered just his forehead and goes around his face. So she's describing a ninja mask right there. She's describing a balaclava. Dylan showed with her hands the mask exposed his nose, but covered the mouth area. So, I mean, it's a ninja mask. Dylan said she believed the suspect was white, but did not remember eyebrow color or what his eyes looked like. You see all those statements that we hear in court, I guess those are coming from the Gooch statement, where Dylan is really trying to minimize. These are going to be a lot closer to the truth. She believed the suspect was white. And she didn't know how she knew he was white, but she believed he was white. Dylan said, well, probably because every light in the house was on, she got a clear look at him and the guy was white. Dylan said when she saw the suspect, he saw her and just left. I'm willing to bet that this is probably the area where lies by omission are really happening. I'm willing to bet that he saw her and said, dial 911 and you're going to end up like the rest of them, and then he left. In my humble opinion, that would be the perfect spot for something like that to have happened to Dylan. And Dylan said she believed he was holding something near his stomach or belt line. Dylan used both hands to point straight out from her abdomen. And when she says point straight out from her abdomen, I want you to think about when somebody holds an SKS. How do they hold it? Especially if they're pointing it at you and saying, say anything and you'll end up like the rest, as the pointing straight out from their abdomen at her with a rifle would have a very strong impact, in my opinion. Dylan then moved her hands apart and back together to simulate a bulge. Dylan said this area was black in color, and she thought now maybe it was a gun. She knew it was a gun. Said the unknown object had an arrow shape. Dylan seemed really unsure and said she was tired during the event. You see how when she gets down to telling them about the gun, for one thing, she's saying it's pointing straight out from her abdomen to describe how that arrow thing was aiming at her, and saying, well, maybe it was a gun, yeah, shaped like an arrow, kind of unsure about the whole event right there. That tells me that is likely when the gun's pointing at her and instructions were given to her. Now, whether she, through her boyfriend, was saved by these people or not, I mean, I have no idea. But I do have an idea of this is where likely that statement was made to Dylan with that gun pointing at her, and that's why she didn't dial 911. And I believe Bethany got a similar but a little bit different thing happened to her. Dylan was asked how long she believed it was from the time Kaylee said someone is here to when she saw the suspect. Dylan said she thought it was about 10 or 20 minutes. Well, that seems to be roughly about what the time frame would be, from 4 a.m. to about 4:19. So pretty good guess there, Dylan. Dylan went on to say she was in and out of it, and she did not fully remember the incident. Minimization. Dylan was asked where the suspect was in the residence when Dylan saw him. Dylan said the suspect was between her bedroom door and the kitchen. It's right in her face. Dylan said she remembered watching the suspect go out the kitchen door and leave. Go out the kitchen door and leave. Now, see, when you start talking about the exculpatory evidence that the defense was really wanting Bethany to testify to, you got to look at stuff like this, because Dylan's talking about she's seeing the guy go out the kitchen door and leave. She's visually seeing this, while law enforcement at the same time is saying that things happened about this time with loud bangs and dogs barking. And this would be about the same time that Bethany is hearing a firework and seeing a flash under her door that could only be seen from the bottom floor if something happened. So what they're describing here is two different incidents with two different people, and everybody knows it. Dylan said once the suspect left, she immediately called Bethany. Dylan said Bethany informed her that she heard a sound that sounded like a firework. Dylan then said she told Bethany she called everyone and they are not answering. Dylan said she was in and out of it and believed everyone was just asleep. Now, this is obvious minimization. She knew everyone wasn't just asleep. Dylan said she then went to Bethany's room, locked that door, and went to bed. Now, we know that's a lie. Why? Because obviously not dialing 911 and possibly leaving the house after that would make these parts after the atrocity need to be lied about. Dylan said she woke up around 11 or 12 and called her roommates. No one answered. Dylan said she called Hunter. Hunter came to the residence, went upstairs, told Dylan to need to call law enforcement immediately. Dylan asked if there was anything else she wanted to share. Dylan, and this is a key part here at the end. Dylan was asked if there was anything else she wanted to share, right? All the questions were done. So anything else you want to share? And then minimization right here. Dylan said the noise, Bethany described the noise as a loud boom, but Dylan did not hear it. So she volunteered that as anything else you'd like to share. Oh yeah, I didn't hear that gunshot. So another example of minimization. So that's Dylan's two statements. And when you take them and you take the key parts out and you put them side by side, you're going to see that a lot of her things that she said are consistent with the first statement to the second statement. And you can almost go through and pick what she minimized and what she omitted and what she made up. And just so there's no question that I'm not just going through and reading their statements and giving you my opinion as I read their statements, I think this will show you how much time and effort I've put on deciphering what I've deciphered and coming to the conclusions that I've come to. And you can see I've color coded. This is the key point takeaways from Dylan's first interview, all the key points taken away from her second interview. And I've color coded it with green. Anything in green here was consistent statements from the first interview to the second interview. The one here in yellow is an inconsistent statement that are consistent with minimizing events in the second interview. And all the ones in purple are new information that could be remembered more. It could be remembering more facts or minimizing her guilt of what happened after the crime. So we're going to go through and I'll show you what I've looked at here. Okay, in the first interview, Dylan was consistent in saying that this all started at 4 a.m., just like she said in the 911 call and just like she said in the second interview. Now, in the first interview, she mentioned nothing about waking up. So when Dylan said she woke up at 4 a.m. to noise, that was something new in the second interview. And to me, that is an obvious lie to minimize because we know it's a lie. I mean, that's one we can verify because she created a contact in her phone at 3:50. She was awake. So this was a lie. Why was she lying about this? I believe it was to minimize her culpability of what happened after it. And then, as I mentioned, Kaylee heard a scream. Now, she never mentions a scream in the second interview because I believe that when she downplays some of the events that she described in the first interview, it's to make her look less culpable for not dialing 911. But she heard Kaylee scream, excuse me, and announce that there was somebody inside the residence. Excuse me. Then she heard Kaylee run to Xana's room, was a statement in the first interview. She said that she locked her door after that. And then a couple of other things she left out in the second interview are more examples of minimization. Is she continued to hear a commotion. Eventually she stopped hearing a struggle. See, these types of descriptive words of what happened, scream, commotion, and struggle, those didn't make it to the second interview because the more focus she puts on scream, commotion, and struggle, the more focus needed to be put on her calling 911, and she didn't. She heard a male say, "You're going to be fine, I'm going to help you." She opened the door, saw a 6-foot slim black ski mask, black 6-foot guy that was slim, dressed in black, wearing a ski mask. Dylan said she saw the man exit the patio door, like she actually witnessed him going out the patio door. So when you come over here to consistent statements, she heard Kaylee go upstairs and say there is someone here. So over here, she said she heard Kaylee run to Xana's room. Over here now, she's added she heard Kaylee go upstairs and say there's someone here. But still consistent. Kaylee sounded scared when saying this. She heard Kaylee run back down the stairs. She jumped up and locked the door because she didn't know what else to do. So these are all consistent statements. She heard a man's voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Again, I believe that was her just summarizing the "you're going to be fine, I'm going to help you," not in a nice way. As she goes on to say, that was said not in a nice way. She didn't recognize the voice. And then she opened the door again. Now, the extra opening the doors were never in the first statement. I believe those are examples of minimization. I think she only opened that door once. And the guy was right there. She described him as 5'10" or taller, not skinny, but athletically built. And she described a ninja mask, which I believe is all consistent with her first statement. She just was a little bit more descriptive on the ski mask. She said she saw him go out the kitchen door and leave. She locked the door as fast as she could. So those statements were all pretty consistent in my opinion. The statements that were new were she heard Kaylee dancing with Murphy. Now, let me go ahead and read you my notes on these. All right, so consistent in 4, Dylan consistently said this started at 4 a.m. She heard Kaylee dancing with Murphy. Changing Kaylee screaming to dancing with Murphy is more like an attempt to minimize the situation why they didn't call 911. She heard Murphy barking. Now, this could have been something she didn't remember before. Kaylee sounded scared when saying this. This is letting us know that Dylan knew the way Kaylee said this was serious, not a friend or a DoorDash delivery. She heard Kaylee run back downstairs, consistent with the first statement. She jumped up, locked the door because she didn't know what else to do, consistent, and another indication that she knew of danger. This wasn't a friend or a DoorDash delivery. She yelled Kaylee's name. Now, this appears to be Dylan trying to seem like she tried to do something, not consistent with the first statements. Dylan said she then tried to call Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie on their phones. Well, that's consistent with the calls and text of what happened afterwards. Dylan said she didn't know how they got in. Actually, that's consistent. Tried to call Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie on their phones. And when we go in this order, that's consistent with the calls and text actually before she called Bethany and said, "I seen a guy in the house." Dylan said she didn't know how they got in. Simple answer to the question that was asked. How do you think they got in? I don't know. Dylan said they were good about locking their doors. This statement suggests they, in fact, locked their doors, including the slider. She opened the door when she cried out to Kaylee, then locked it because she was scared. Again, I think this is an example of expanding the story to minimize culpability. She said she opened the door again and heard who she thought was Kaylee, but could have been Xana crying in the bathroom. Again, opened the door again, expanding to minimize she was sure that it was Kaylee, but now knowing in the second interview that it was Xana downstairs that was unalive, she's rationalizing why it could have been Xana in her mind. She heard a man's voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." That was consistent with, it's going to be all right, I'm going to help you. It was not said it was said not in a not nice way. She didn't recognize the voice. This indicates one assailant saying it to another. There's no way to say "I'm going to help you" to someone in a mean way that you're not that you're trying to unalive. That's you talking to somebody else. She said she cried out to Kaylee again, and there was no crying after that. Another indication of expanding to minimize. She knew what that meant, and I doubt she cried out at all. She said she cried out. She said she opened the door again, and the guy was right there. This is likely the first time she actually opened the door because she didn't hear any more terror. She described him as 5. This is both consistent, the 5'10" or taller. She believed he was white, but did not remember eyebrow color or eyes. In the first 2 statements, there is no mention of bushy eyebrows at all. That came with Gooch later. The suspect saw her and just left. No doubt he saw her. Here's where the likely lie by omission occurred and a threat would have been made. She thought he was holding an arrow-shaped gun. This may have been enough to call all the lies in the delayed 911 call, but I suspect there was a threat there also with that gun pointing at her. She said the incident took 10 to 20 minutes. I believe the evidence shows that's a good estimate. She said when he saw her between the bedroom door and kitchen, he was really close to her. She said she saw him go out the kitchen door and leave. That's consistent with the first statement. She locked the door as fast as she could, consistent with tremendous fear. Once the suspect left, she immediately called Bethany. This is the 4:20 and 28-second timestamp in the calls. Bethany said she heard what sounded like a firework. This is part of Bethany's exculpatory evidence. She heard a gunshot. However, she may have, in fact, seen a man in his underwear a few minutes before the atrocity started. I'll just throw that in there because I seen that in my comments and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Whoever said it, great job. Then she said she called everyone and they are not answering, consistent with calls and texts. And then all the lies kicked in. She believed everyone was just asleep. Obvious lies to minimize what happened next. She said she then went to B's room and locked the door and went to sleep. We know that's a lie made to minimize. She said she awoke at 11 or 12, another lie made to minimize. She said she did not hear Bethany's loud boom, another lie to minimize due to the time and manner this information was given. And as I showed you in the actual statement, that was when he asked her, do you want to add anything else? Oh yeah, I didn't hear what Bethany's loud boom was. And we know that is not consistent because when we go to Bethany's statements were pretty consistent throughout. She didn't mention anything about really what happened after the atrocity much on the first 2 statements. But when they got to Reno, she expanded, and you follow the same pattern as with Dylan. But we're going to start right here in her Reno statement. At around 2 o'clock, Kaylee and Maddie came home. Maddie, Kaylee, Dylan, and Bethany went up to Kaylee's bedroom once they got home. Kaylee was getting ready for bed, whatever that means, as they were hanging out in her room. Bethany, Maddie, and Dylan went downstairs, and Maddie and Bethany took Murphy outside and let him go to the bathroom. We've already discussed all that. Bethany only stayed outside for a short time, and she then went back into the house and put something away in her cupboard and grabbed a bag of chips. Bethany went downstairs to go to bed. Bethany stated nothing was unusual about Maddie and Bethany's demeanor when they got home. There's nothing unusual about Maddie and B's demeanor when they got home. I don't know why that says B. That should be Kaylee, huh? Bethany stated they both appeared to be happy. B said Maddie was highly intoxicated, and she had not seen her at that level of intoxication for a very long time. Bethany said when she went to bed, she was using her iPad to watch a TV show off Hulu. She said she was watching Baby Daddy, which is very consistent with her other statements. Bethany could not remember what episode she was watching or how long she was watching. As she was watching the show, Maddie came downstairs and asked her if she had Murphy with her because she could not find him. Bethany told her no. Bethany said her door was locked and she normally locks her door. So that might be a key. Bethany actually had locks on her door that worked. And she normally locks her door when she goes to bed. Bethany told me she eventually turned off the show and her iPad and went to sleep. Now, before we get into her events, one thing I do want to point out is, where is it at? Okay, Bethany stated she walked home at around 1 o'clock and Dylan and L, who is this unknown person that was actually at the house, LM, were the only one in the house. Bethany, Dylan, and L were watching Vampire Diaries for a while, and at around 1:22 hours, L left. So even though L left at 1:22, the fact that there was somebody else in the house with Dylan, I mean, they could have given Dylan their phone number, and that could have been the contact Dylan created at 350. I know everybody wants to choke me for that, but I think that's the most logical thing because I never knew of anybody else that was in the house with them. Now that I do know somebody was in the house, then they could have given their number, and Dylan could have just been putting it in her phone at 350. That's just a speculation, but that's just what I'm thinking now. Dylan went to her room after L left, and then we get into what we just read. But now we're going to come down here to what she says happened. Now, Bethany said she woke up after falling asleep to hearing what she felt was a firecracker go off. And she thought she saw a sparkler going off through the crack under her door. Now, I've already showed you the evidence around that. I'm not going to tell you what that evidence tells me at this point. Bethany stated she did not know what happened. Either Bethany called Dylan or Dylan called Bethany, and Dylan stated she thought she had just seen someone dressed in black in the house. Bethany said Xana had been wearing all black. Dylan responded by saying she thought he had a ski mask on, and then it just kind of goes through their text and stuff. But down here it says, after Bethany tried calling Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan's phones, nobody answered. Bethany said it was normal for Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan not to answer if they were sleeping if she called late at night. Minimization. Bethany looked at her phone and it showed Bethany called Dylan at 4:19 and at 4:20. Dylan called Bethany back. During the call, Bethany asked Dylan if she heard a firecracker, and Dylan said she did. All right. And Dylan said she did. Bethany asked Dylan if she heard a firecracker, and Dylan said she did. Now, remember, I said that was a key point when the officers in Dylan's second interview said, "Is there anything else you'd like to add?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I didn't hear the firecracker Bethany said she heard." And the way she added it was just kind of strange. And then you look at Bethany's statement, and she said that Dylan said she did hear that firecracker. So that was an example of Dylan minimizing the firecracker in the gun. Bethany could not recall if it was during this call, and I got in here, no, it was during the 4:20 and 28 call, lasted 41 seconds. Dylan was talking about seeing someone in black walking in the house. Once Bethany and Dylan were in the bedroom together, they continued to talk about what they had heard and saw. Bethany told me Dylan said the male in black was walking out the back door and they had made eye contact with each other. Bethany said Dylan said the male was white with a big nose and that he was possibly holding minimization, a small vacuum type object. Yeah, right. Bethany and Dylan did not call 911 at the time because, and here's where their lies start, because Bethany thought Dylan was imagining what she was talking about. So that's why they would change a gun to a vacuum type object and a gunshot probably to a firecracker. But yeah, these we know are lies. So that tells us what happened after the event. We can't really know what they did after the event. Did they stay in the bedroom or did they run across to Hunter and Emily's apartment, which I'm voting B. I think they went to Hunter and Emily's apartment because for some reason Hunter and Emily just happened to wake up around that time and say they were awake until 5 a.m. But Bethany told me prior to hearing the firecracker, she thought she heard Murphy bark. She also heard what she thought was the beer pong table moving and cups falling. Well, that's what she thought she heard. What she actually heard was Anna and Ethan being attacked, more than likely. The beer pong table was located in the living room, which is above Bethany's bedroom. Well, we seen the pictures. The beer pong table wasn't turned over, so she was hearing she was hearing Anna and Ethan being attacked, probably Kaylee as well, and this is an example of minimizing with the ping pong table stuff. She stated she was not sure what the sequence of events were for sure, but she knows she heard Murphy bark, the beer pong table, and then the firecracker first before she called Dylan to see if she had heard the same thing. Bethany told me she tried calling Xana and Maddie at 4:21 and then tried calling Ethan at 4:22. Bethany stated that makes a lot of sense. She didn't try to call Kaylee because she just got off the phone with Dylan, and Dylan probably told her that she thought Kaylee had been unalived. So she tried to call Xana, Maddie, and Ethan. Bethany stated she tried calling Maddie, Kaylee, Xana several more times once Dylan got into her room. We'll check the calls on that. I think that's another example of minimization. Bethany told me she went to the bed. She remembers most of the lights being left on inside the house. Bethany told me after trying to contact the other roommate, she fell back asleep and then woke up about 7:30. And then, this is all lies about toothaches and everything else. So it looks to me like the key takeaways with Bethany with her third statement and her first two statements was the minimization of what happened after the event and the minimization of things that would tell any normal person they need to call 911. So they tried to downplay those things. And it's quite obvious. And I imagine that it was a threat to both Dylan upstairs, and you can bet that pop shot downstairs was likely a threat to Bethany, probably accompanied with some words as well. But you can bet that these calls that they made to their parents were calls where their parents said, well, you didn't call 911, so we need to work this out, and you need to minimize some of the things that you tell law enforcement, like what happened after the crime. In my humble opinion, that's where the minimization, the lies by omission, and everything else likely took place. But it is, in my opinion, likely that they did not stay there after that they did go to Hunter and Emily's place. And it's this statement from a neighbor witness that kind of lets the cat out of the bag on that. So on November 17th, taken by Aaron Morris, sequence number 20. And you can see on November 17th at 1430 hours, I responded to the University of Idaho Kibble Dome to interview J.N. Captain Barrett stated N possibly had information regarding the unaliving. N took Detective Dean and myself to a conference room to speak. N stated that on Sunday, November the 13th, 2022, between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., he was walking his dog. He stated he walked by the first time he noticed the front door to 1122 King Road on the north side of the building facing the campus was wide open. So remember, the north side is the front of the house. That's their front door right here. It would have been wide open. And Bethany's room is over here. Stairs come down to the front door being wide open. So that means Dylan would have had to run down the stairs and not out the wide open front door, not shut the door and run around to Bethany's room if they had stayed there. He stated he knew it was a party house, so he assumed someone was too intoxicated and forgot to close the door the night prior. He stated he walked his dog up to Taylor Avenue to Blake and then down Sweet Avenue. He said the walk took him approximately an hour. He stated he walked back to his apartment around 11 o'clock and the front door was still wide open. He said he was unsure if the information was known or not, but thought he should report it. He was asked if he knew anybody that lived in the house. Said not personally, but in passing. They thanked him and he was cleared. So I think that's as good of confirmation as we can get that that front door of the house was open from probably before 9 a.m. till at least 11 a.m. So yeah, I think they left shortly after, went over to the White's apartment where Hunter and Emily and everybody was, and sat there till they talked to their parents, and then went back over and had the little fake 911 call. When law enforcement got involved, I guess we may never know. Oh yeah, and I think it's very likely that because Maddie and Kaylee took Murphy out, and I mean because Bethany and Maddie actually are the ones that took Murphy out, not Kaylee and Maddie, like everybody's still sticking to that old stuff that they thought they knew. Read the docs, read the statement. Bethany really clear about her and Maddie took Murphy out. Bethany then went back inside, left Maddie out there with Murphy. Maddie being very, very drunk, apparently lost Murphy outside and then went back in and asked Bethany if she seen him, and she said no. So Maddie probably said the heck with it and went to bed. And that's why when you hear the dog barking, you can tell the dog's outside when he's barking. And likely Murphy was outside all night until right before Nunez come walking through the house with his body cam. And you can bet Nunez put Murphy in Kaylee's bedroom. And how is it that Murphy did not track any blood anywhere? Well, when you look in Kaylee's bedroom from the crime scene photo and you see under this desk Murphy right here, and then you zoom in on it and you see what they did to Murphy. Murphy didn't crawl in here and then climb underneath this chair and was like, this is a good place to hide and rest. They stuck Murphy under this desk and they stuck this office chair and they pushed it over Murphy and wedged him in there so he couldn't get out till they walked in with that body cam. There is no doubt in my mind. There's no way Murphy got underneath that chair like that by himself and laid down. That's what you call a jam job right there. Okay, so I just wanted to go through all of that just to show you why my thoughts on the situation around the roommates had changed. And I wanted to let you know that it hadn't changed just because of a whim, that I put a lot of time and effort in coming to my determinations. And there's no doubt they lied, but the reason they lied is I believe now that I'm locked stone on it. I believe they were threatened, they were scared. I believe that's why Bethany won't come back even to give a victim impact statement. And it's quite possible that Dylan in court thought Kohberger may have been one of them, because that's what law enforcement has told her. And she wouldn't want to look at the person that threatened her life and unalived her friends if that was the case. So you're free to believe what you want to believe. That's where Pov's at right now. And I gave you the roadmap to how I got there. I've put a lot of time and effort in this one, and I didn't even plan on it. So I think I'm going to take off tomorrow. We'll do the comment video on Thursday, and then I'll try to finish up the second part of part 3 on Friday for you. 20 days left, y'all. get to filing. I think if a notice of appeal is going to be filed, though, I think they'll wait till the last possible second, because I really believe that they're trying to get some results from that special prosecutor in his investigation before they file. But I could be wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms. I appreciate all of you out there. And until next time, Pavarotti's out.
until I